You bite into a tough, raw root, your jaw aching as you chew for the third hour today. Every muscle is exhausted. For billions of years on Earth,
Here in the
every
ancient
single creature
savanna,
had to
we see
eat
the
its
mighty
food
saber-toothed
entirely
cat
raw.
enjoying
There were
a fresh
absolutely
meal of
no
meat,
exceptions in
while the
nature. In 99% of human history, a hot meal was physically impossible. You survived solely on what you pulled directly from the dirt. But if your ancestors didn't accidentally drop their food into the flames, the highly complex brain reading these words right now would simply not exist. To truly understand why, you have to strip away the modern world. No stoves, no ovens, no microwaves, just you and the wild. Imagine your hominids spent up to 6 hours every single day just chewing raw, tough plant matter. 6 hours. That is nearly a full modern workday dedicated to nothing but crushing tough fibers and breaking down raw meat with your flat teeth. If you, a modern human, tried to survive on a completely raw, unprocessed wild diet today, you would likely starve to death in the wild. Why? Because your jaw is simply too weak, and your stomach is entirely the wrong shape. You just don't have the time to extract enough calories. This brings us to a massive evolutionary wall. Your body is a biological engine, and it runs on a very strict budget of calories. Every organ demands energy to function, but there is one exceptional, greedy organ that takes far more than its fair share: your hungry brain. Today, your brain takes up only about 2% of your body weight, but it burns through a staggering 20% of your daily energy. In the wild, an organ this expensive is a huge liability. If you are constantly starving, a giant brain will get you killed, not saved. So, how did you afford it? According to the anthropologist Richard Wrangham and his catching fire hypothesis, you didn't evolve a big brain first. The timeline of fossils tells a different story. The dramatic expansion of the human skull only happened after a crucial, accidental culinary revolution with fire. To understand this, you need to look inside your own body. Digestion is not free. It is an incredibly exhausting, energy-draining biological process. Breaking down tough, raw plant fibers and raw meat requires a massive, complex intestinal tract, working non-stop just to extract basic calories. In the animal kingdom, you cannot have both a massive gut and a massive brain. Your body simply cannot afford the energy bill. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute call this an evolutionary trade-off. To power a larger brain, another expensive organ had to shrink. That organ was your digestive tract. But a smaller stomach means you can no longer survive on the low-quality raw diet of apes. You were trapped. You needed more calories for your new brain, but you had less physical equipment to digest them. You needed a miracle. That miracle was a glowing red ember. When your ancestors harnessed fire, they essentially invented an external stomach that did the chewing for them. Fire is a chemical time machine. When you roast a tough root or a piece of meat, the intense heat physically breaks down tough proteins. It melts fats and gelatinizes starches, completely pre-digesting the food before it ever touches your lips. The caloric yield absolutely skyrockets. A raw potato might give you only a fraction of its energy, but a baked potato delivers an instant, massive spike of pure, accessible fuel. Because the fire did all the hard physical work, your ancestors no longer needed giant jaws, huge teeth, or a massive, heavy digestive system. Over thousands of generations, your jaw receded, your teeth shrank to the tiny, flat, weak tools you have inside your mouth right now. And your entire torso changed shape. If you look at a chimpanzee or an early hominid, their rib cage is shaped like a wide, heavy bell. But your rib cage became flat and narrow. You traded a giant digestive system for a sleek, efficient body and a towering, energy-hungry intellect. You had successfully outsourced your digestion to a campfire. You were no longer just another animal. You were a creature entirely built by fire. But how do we know this incredible shift actually happened? To find the answer, you have to dig deep underground. In a place called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, archaeologists discovered something completely game-changing buried deep in the ancient dirt. They found microscopic traces of wood, ash, and burned animal bone, dating back at least 1 million years into the past. This is widely considered the earliest confirmed archaeological evidence of your ancient ancestors intentionally gathering and using fire inside a safe cave. But your earliest ancestors did not know how to start a fire from scratch using sticks. They were entirely opportunistic gatherers of flames. Imagine a massive lightning strike violently hitting the dry prehistoric savanna, instantly sparking a terrifying, roaring, unstoppable wildfire across the land. Every other animal on Earth naturally fled in sheer panic. Their biological survival instinct screamed at them to run away immediately. But one of your brave ancestors did something completely unnatural. They stopped running, turned around, and stared directly at the flames. They cautiously approached the smoking, burning landscape and found the charred, perfectly roasted remains of wild plants and animals left behind. Taking a bite of a naturally roasted tuber, their brain lit up, with a massive dopamine rush from the incredibly easy calories. Eventually, someone found the immense courage to pick up a smoldering, burning branch before the wild flames completely died out into cold ash. They carefully carried this fragile, glowing ember back to their shelter, treating it exactly like a precious, living, breathing wild creature. You had to constantly feed it dry leaves and wood. If the fire starved and died, your tribe could easily perish too. This single brave act of carrying a burning stick fundamentally separated your evolutionary path from every other wild primate on the planet. You were no longer just a passive participant in nature's brutal game. You had captured the sun and brought it into the darkness. With this incredible new power in your hands, your evolution went into overdrive. You didn't just get a bigger brain, you got an entirely new body. Meet Homo erectus. Anthropologists consider them the first true masters of fire, and their skeletons reveal a shocking transformation compared to earlier apes. In Kenya, scientists discovered a nearly complete fossil known as Turkana, dating back around 1.6 million years. He looked shockingly modern. Gone were the long, ape-like arms meant for climbing trees. You now had incredibly long, powerful legs perfectly engineered for walking and running vast distances. And because you were no longer sleeping high up in cold, windy trees, you didn't need thick fur to survive the freezing nights anymore. The fire kept you perfectly warm. You began to permanently lose your thick body hair, exposing bare skin. This allowed you to sweat and cool down faster than any other creature. This incredible physical upgrade, combined with the massive calorie surplus from cooked food, unlocked a terrifying new strategy: persistence hunting. Most wild predators, like giant cats or wolves, rely on short, explosive bursts of speed. They overheat extremely quickly and must stop. But you could run for hours in the blistering midday sun. You simply jogged after your prey until it collapsed from sheer heat exhaustion. You officially became the ultimate endurance predator on the planet. And what did you do with the massive amounts of raw meat you successfully brought back? You cooked it. Cooked meat provided an unprecedented, incredible wave of dense, high-quality fats and proteins, sending a massive flood of nutrients directly up to your brain. Your cerebral cortex, the specific area entirely responsible for complex thought, future, planning, and advanced problem-solving, began to physically expand inside your changing skull. As your brain grew smarter, you started making exponentially better, more lethal tools. The simple broken rocks of the past were replaced by perfectly symmetrical hand axes. You were no longer just reacting blindly to the dangerous world around you. For the very first time in history, you were actively designing and shaping it to your absolute will. But fire did not just completely change your anatomy and your physical diet. It was about to revolutionize the way you experience the most terrifying, deadly time of day. For millions of years, the setting sun meant immediate, absolute terror. When darkness fell, you were completely blind. But the monsters outside were not. Prehistoric predators like cave lions and giant hyenas were perfectly evolved to hunt in pitch-black conditions. To them, you were just an easy midnight snack. But the campfire changed the rules of nature. The bright, searing flames created an impenetrable glowing wall of safety between you and the wild. Every single wild predator is instinctively terrified of fire. For the very first time in history, you could sleep soundly on the forest floor. This incredible newfound safety fundamentally rewired how your body rested. You didn't sleep for 8 uninterrupted hours like you try to do today. According to historian Roger E. Kirch, before the invention of modern artificial lighting, human beings universally experienced something known as segmented sleep. Because the prehistoric night lasted up to 12 hours in the winter, it was simply too long to sleep through in one single stretch. Instead, your ancestors slept in 2 distinct shifts. You had a first sleep just after dusk, followed by a peaceful waking period, and then a second sleep. Waking up at 2 in the morning wasn't a frustrating bout of insomnia. It was a completely natural, biologically programmed part of your daily rhythm. So, what exactly did you do during those quiet, dark midnight hours? You definitely weren't out hunting or foraging in the dangerous pitch black. You stayed close to the warm embers. You added fresh wood to the fire, checked the perimeter for glowing eyes, and tended to the children. Most importantly, this artificial light effectively extended your day. The campfire gave you something that no other animal had ever experienced before: free time. During the harsh daylight, all your energy was strictly focused on brutal survival, hunting, and chewing. There was no time for complex social bonding, but sitting together in the magical, flickering orange glow of the midnight camp, the intense pressure of survival finally faded away into the darkness. In this safe, illuminated bubble, your ancestors started doing something entirely new. They began using their newly expanded brains to share abstract thoughts. The roaring fire in front of you did not just cook your meat. It cooked something far more profound. It cooked human culture itself. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent decades studying the Jew, Hawansi Bushmen in Africa, observing exactly how the campfire fundamentally alters human communication and thought. She discovered a fascinating divide. During the harsh daylight hours, over 80% of your ancestors' conversations were strictly focused on economics and survival. In the daytime, you talked about where to find food, who owed whom favor, or you simply complained about the exhausting physical labor. But the moment the sun went down and the tribe gathered around the glowing embers, the entire nature of human language completely transformed. At night, over 80% of the conversation shifted to storytelling. You stopped talking about the dirt and started talking about the stars. Elders shared epic myths, legends of animal spirits, and tales of distant ancestors. For the first time, your mind traveled beyond the physical world. You began to imagine things that did not physically exist in front of you. This was the exact birthplace of human imagination and religion. This shared imagination created an invisible, unbreakable web of trust between your people. You were no longer just individuals surviving, you were a unified culture. According to evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar, humans have a cognitive limit known as Dunbar's number. You can only maintain about 150 stable relationships. Apes maintain their much smaller social groups by physically grooming each other. But to keep 150 humans together, you needed something much faster. You used gossip and storytelling around the fire. The campfire was essentially the original social media platform for your ancient, growing community. It was where reputations were carefully built, where knowledge was passed down, and where selfish or arrogant behavior was strictly punished by the group. If a hunter became too arrogant, the tribe would openly mock his meat, a practice designed to enforce absolute equality and keep everyone humble. This deep social bonding around the flames is the exact biological reason why your modern brain still craves deep, intimate conversations late at night. But the incredible story of fire and food does not end with a peaceful campfire. In fact, it leads directly to your greatest modern struggle. For hundreds of thousands of years, finding dense calories like sweet, wild honey, or rich animal fat was incredibly rare. It was a survival jackpot. When you found these rare, energy-dense foods, your newly evolved brain rewarded you with massive spikes of dopamine. It trained you to gorge yourself immediately. This ancient biological wiring worked perfectly because nature had a strict built-in safety switch: absolute physical scarcity. You simply couldn't overeat even if you tried. But fast forward to today. You are walking down the aisle of a modern supermarket, surrounded by thousands of cheap, hyper-processed, ready-to-eat meals. Evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman calls this a classic evolutionary mismatch. Your body is perfectly adapted to an ancient environment that simply no longer exists. When you look at a greasy, sugary donut, your conscious mind knows it is bad for you, but your ancient DNA absolutely does not care. Your prehistoric genes still truly believe you are starving on the harsh savanna. They scream at you to eat every single calorie before winter arrives. Furthermore, modern industrial processing is essentially the ultimate extreme version of prehistoric cooking. It is fire and pre-digestion taken to a dangerous, unnatural, absolute limit. Food today is engineered to be so incredibly soft, so refined, that your digestive tract burns almost zero physical energy breaking it down. Remember that massive energy trade-off? You traded a large stomach for a massive brain, relying on fire to do the heavy digestive lifting for you. But now, the food is completely pre-digested by machines before it even touches your mouth. You absorb a massive, instantaneous flood of pure liquid sugar. Because your ancient body has absolutely no biological defense mechanism against this infinite abundance, the energy scale drastically tips in the completely wrong direction. The excess energy has nowhere to go. It turns into an epidemic of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease, killing millions of modern humans every year. The incredible evolutionary trick that originally built your massive brain and gave you dominance over nature has now transformed into a deadly biological trap. So, how do you escape this evolutionary trap? You cannot just magically erase hundreds of thousands of years of survival instincts from your DNA. But you possess something that no other animal has. You have the massive, highly complex cerebral cortex that the ancient campfire built for you. Your brain is finally smart enough to understand its own programming. You can actively choose to step away from the artificial abundance of modern life. You can choose whole, natural foods, forcing your body to actually work and burn energy during digestion, exactly like your ancient ancestors did. And you can recreate the magic of the prehistoric nighttime camp. When you gather around a dinner table with your closest friends today, you are doing exactly what the earliest Homo erectus did. You are sharing calories, telling stories, and building an unbreakable web of trust. The technology has completely changed, but your deep biological need for that warm, illuminated social bubble has remained exactly the same for millennia. Fire is no longer just a tool we use to survive the cold, dark night. Fire physically became a permanent part of us. It shrank your stomach, weakened your jaw, stripped away your thick fur, and completely rewired how your species interacts with the physical world. You are not just a smart ape. You are the only creature in .com, the universe that is biologically dependent on cooked food. So, the next time you sit down for dinner, take a moment to look at the hot, steaming food resting quietly on your plate. You take a bite of a warm, perfectly cooked meal. Your jaw does not ache. You do not spend your entire day desperately chewing. For billions of years on Earth, every single creature had to eat its food entirely raw. There were absolutely no exceptions in nature. In 99% of human history, achieving this effortless burst of pure, accessible energy was completely, physically, and biologically impossible. But if your ancestors didn't accidentally drop their food into the flames, the highly complex brain reading these words right now would simply not exist.